This episode is brought to you by Ghost Patch. Ghost Patch is a law enforcement owned and operated company specializing in patches, coins, and flex shields. Quality is top priority with low prices. They always offer free design work and never charge mold or setup fees. Stop letting the big companies rip you off and check out Ghost Patch at ghostpatch.com and ghostpatchcustom.com. Now to the next story.
So I looked at him, I said, "We've lost Jeff." So I turned back around and told the other guys, I said, "Hey, Jeff's not here. We're going back in." Because as bad as it was for us to get him out, Wade and I to pull him out, because by that time Wade had already come back around front so we could get a game plan going. As bad as it was to get him out, it still wasn't bad enough that we were not going to go back in and get Jeff. So that's what I told him. I said, "Hey, let's gear back up. We've got to go back in and get Jeff." It helps some of these other guys that are coming in that are just, whether it be a banker or whatever, to see a guy that's a fireman or a policeman in the military. Hey, this guy, he's having the same problems I'm having. It's beneficial. And so, like I say, when they do the crawfish thing, Pat and Allison and then Pat's family, they come. I mean, they want the people to know that, hey, yeah, you've got these people that you see day in, day out, but the owner and the president, we care about you too. We want your life to get back on track. A lot of times a guy will put something on his collar, star, bar, whatever, and all of a sudden he's the smartest person there ever was. He's the only person that's ever done it. And it's like, no, there's been a gazillion that have done it before you. There will be a gazillion that do it after you, and chances are you're not going to set the world on fire. To realize that just because you have those on your collar doesn't make you the smartest person in the room, and that's okay.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
On February 16, 1964, the fire alarm box was pulled on the corner of Commerce and Browder in downtown Dallas. This high-end steakhouse, the Golden Pheasant, was ablaze and the fire was growing in this cold winter night. Dallas firefighters at Station 18 got the call and responded to Commerce Street. They were trying to figure out the source of the blaze when the floor collapsed. The fire that started in the basement engulfed the entire building. The printing press on the third floor housed heavy machinery that fell from the third floor into the basement. The 4 brave Dallas firefighters that entered were trapped from the collapse and the debris. Over 700 firefighters were called to the scene, some coming from their home as they raced to the Golden Pheasant to attempt to save their friends. Over 1,000 Dallas spectators would watch as DFD did their work to battle this fire. But at the end of the night, the Dallas Fire Department would have lost 4 members, and this fire will go down as the worst fire in Dallas history. Today's guest has also served since 1985 and has forged lifelong relationships, has a reputation for being a true mentor and true leader in the Dallas Fire Department. We are very honored to sit down with Dallas Fire and Rescue Battalion Chief, Station 4, Greg Stoy. Chief Stoy, thanks for being here with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh yeah, what I've heard about you from your troops and probably some people you don't even know I talked to. They're real excited about this interview.
Well, good. I appreciate that. If
No
it's,
pressure.
Yeah, no doubt. But if it's anything at all, I mean, if I happen to be anything at all, it's not anything to do with me. It's that somebody else has had a huge impact on me, whether it be I'm a Christian, so whether it be Jesus or he's put people like you and y'all in front of me to help me get this message out, and then the guys that I work with, if there's anything good that's ever came from me, it's always because somebody else has helped that come along. Mostly bad comes from me, so maybe that's why they like me.
Humble too.
Oh, yeah.
I want to welcome on my co-host Kent. Thanks for being here.
You betcha.
All right, we're going to go ahead and dive into this, man.
Sounds good.
We got a lot to get to. You've been on here since 1985, so there's a
Yeah.
lot to you, and your family's history with Dallas Fire Department, going back to your father. I mean, there's just decades and decades here.
Yes, he came on in like the late 1950s, and at the time he came on. They were 24 on, 24 off.
Oh.
So we're 24/48 now, obviously, and then a lot of the departments now are going to 48/96 or trying to go 24/72.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys did 24/24, and they didn't want to take the 24 off. I mean, even though they had families, there was just so many things going on. I mean, back in the 60s, 70s, everything was burning. There was a lot of things going on. So
oh yeah, well, even in the 50s in Dallas, I read the book, The Accommodation, about all the house fires.
Yes.
That were going on in the black communities.
Yes.
And
Yep.
So.
And so he where he was, he spent he came out of rookie school. He went to 18s, which 18s was under Woodall Rogers. Woodall Rogers wasn't there then.
What street was that on?
It was McKinney.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure McKinney would dead end right down there into the west, where the West End is.
Right.
And then I think El Phoenix might have probably was still there, so they could see all that. But yeah, there was an engine there and a truck at one time. Which an engine, some of you may know, the guys at the fire department will know for sure, but an engine is what carries water, pumps water. A truck has the aerial ladder on top and does all that kind of thing. So they had both of those there. They opened another station up. I think it's like Ross and Leonard up there, kind of where the Meyerson and that stuff is. Mm-hmm. And I think they moved that truck from there down there, and then the engine stayed at 18s.
Now 18 is at a different location now, right?
Yes, it's off of Griffin and Ross right now.
That's
it's
right.
Back just a little bit south and right closer to downtown.
We're gonna get into something here in a little bit about Station 18 responded to back in the 60s.
Sure, that'd be great.
I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
You number your stations.
Yes.
Is there any significance to it? Like as to
No, as a matter of fact, it's weird. And I'm not real big on how the history of that works, but for instance, like fours, which is, and we use them with plural for some reason or another. It's not like it's possessive S.
Right.
We had a chief that came in and he would only call it like 4 or 18. Well, I think we do it plural because there's more of us there. There's in a single company house, there's 5 guys assigned, and you're 5s, or
that makes
4s
sense.
or whatever. So anyway, I'm thinking that, but where I'm going with that is back when my dad was on, he was at 4s for a while, and they had 2 engines there, engine 12 and engine 4. They didn't have a station 12, which is out in Duncanville at the time. So there were several stations that ran 2 engines out of a station, and it would be a station that there would be a number that there wasn't a station yet. 18s, and we'll get into this in a little bit also, it used to have 2.
And is it like a sequential thing? As soon as they open a new one, they just go to the next number?
The next number. And so one thing, and this was way before my time, or not way before my time, but before my time, they used to have this thing called the Joker system. And it was kind of like a little ticker tape thing. And so when a box would come in, like when they do those pull boxes, it would tap out like ding, 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 and it would ring. And then there's this little ticker tape thing would roll across as it would click, and that would kick the boxes out. Well, those machines couldn't do zeros because you can't tap a zero. So there were no 0 stations. The stations also, there wasn't a 10s, there wasn't a 20s, there wasn't a 30s. In fact, I think 30s didn't even come online until after I was already on the department. No 40s was like that.
Fascinating.
And so if they shut one down and build another one for that, they just
same number.
Same number.
Yeah, same number.
Okay.
Because I've seen a lot of, we made our rounds at a lot of the stations, and I saw some nice new stations.
Yeah.
One off Lego that I had never seen before.
Yeah, that's 44. So if you go up there, it's close to the Fair Park now. The old one, if you go back down,
it's like half
south,
a block down.
Yeah, not very far down at all. It's just the old station.
When I was out at Southeast, we used to go that one quite often to watch the Cowboy
Yeah,
game. Or
yeah.
we actually would meet there to game plan for like a drug house we're about to go hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when I was at 34s in the Grove, that happened quite often where the police would SWAT, whatever, would gather up there. Those kind of were good days also because that's before cell phones and, y'all guys would actually come in and sit down at the station. We'd watch TV together and kind of carry. So you actually knew the police officers that were in your area. That was
different
neat.
now.
Oh, way different.
Even early on in my career, I always felt like I was kind of intruding. Like I felt like an outsider every time I'd walk in there. But when I went with my trainer, he was like, they welcomed him.
Oh,
in.
yeah.
And I guess I never took the time to really develop the relationship.
Yeah.
We were busy too on third watch at Southeast. There wasn't a whole lot of time for sitting around.
Were you in Southeast also?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
So Station 4, where it sits now, is at 30 and
at 30 in Akron. Akron and KD's is where it is, right across from City Hall. Right.
So is that the
That's
original?
the original place from what I understand. It's 50. It was built in like 54 or something like that.
It's tiny.
Yeah, it is. We've got a tiller truck, an engine, and an ambulance, a chief there. It's a lot of fun. I mean
but very busy.
Very busy. It was the busiest ambulance in the city last year. 18s, which is the new 18s, obviously. It has 2 ambulances there, an engine, a truck, and an air wagon. Their engine outran every one of our ambulances last year. They made they made almost, I think it's between 23 and 25,000 runs out of that station last year.
Probably a lot of overdoses right
there.
there.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah,
the homeless. You got the DART station there, and they're just so centrally located. That's what happens to our ambulance a lot is you're so centrally located that when, say, for instance, an ambulance in the Grove is out, well, okay, they'll get 4 rescue to head that way or the ambulance to head that way, and somebody will clear up out there, take that run. Well, by that time, 704 is already here. So then it's like, okay, well, you're close. I mean, they'll hopscotch there all the way out to 20. Wow. No kidding.
Just for being
They've
close.
been out to 20 before.
And
as far up as 635 on the north end. It's wild.
It's like a Swiss Army knife.
Exactly.
So let's talk about you growing up. Where'd you grow up? In Dallas?
Kaufman.
Oh, Kaufman.
Yeah,
okay.
Kaufman. Yeah, I was born in Terrell, not Terrell State, but Terrell.
I worked at Terrell State before this.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's a mental hospital.
Joe worked there.
I worked there.
Air quotes.
I escaped and I applied for DPD.
You were perfect fit. Yeah.
Man, that job was. I've said it before. That was one of the most stressful jobs, and I've been doing this 28 years in this place. But that was.
I can imagine it. I cannot imagine.
It was scary.
Yeah. When I was in high school and whatever, like I said, Kaufman, we'd drive by and you just look haunted. It was just so.
It was.
Yeah.
You remember Familiar Footsteps over off MLK?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Remember how every time you'd go there, like somebody was in the front that worked there, but nobody actually lived there. Everybody worked there.
Let me tell you that. Yeah. So Terrell was pretty much known for the Terrell State Hospital.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we would always, I knew a lot of people. Once I even got to Southeast, there was a couple of those kind of halfway houses or like old folks' homes that people come from Terrell State.
Yeah.
And Rusk was the state hospital with the really bad folks.
Yes, down way East Texas.
Yeah, it was very scary.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people come in from there to Terrell State, and
when they graduated from Rusk,
they graduated, they got their diploma, and came out to us. Yep. So your father worked. Can you talk about your father? How long he was with DFD?
Yeah, he was with them for 31 years. Came on in the late 50s, 24-hour shift. They had a relief time of 11 o'clock. So at that point in time, I was young, obviously very young, and I can remember the 11 o'clock relief time. I would get to watch him leave in the morning. He had a lot of free time, so we were able to hang out and do a lot of stuff together as I was growing up. I really enjoyed that.
How was that for you, say, having a firefighter father? Was that a sense of pride?
Yeah, it was. I don't think I really realized it until I was in junior high that it that there was a little bit to it. Sometimes there's people make more of it than they should, and then a lot of times people make a lot, just like with police officers. It's either you've got this spectrum that tries to make it like it's we're the best in the world, or there's other ones that we're just a bunch of morons, mouth breathers, and that kind of thing. So, but then that's and then the older I got, and then when I finally got on, that's when you just start saying, hey man, a lot of this stuff really does matter,
And you saw a lot. I mean, your father's. You've seen a lot of change, and you've actually surpassed your father's tenure here.
Yes.
But he saw so much change from the 50s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did. He saw
The equipment alone.
The equipment alone was different, and obviously during that time frame, the Kennedy thing happened.
Yeah,
so
that was a big deal
It was
here.
a huge deal here, and like you said, we'll get into it a little bit where the golden pheasant, and then there was 2 or 3 other. We had back then they had quite a few large fires, especially downtown. I mean, you don't see it as much now because the buildings are so much better built, and
they have the sprinkler system and other safety guards in there.
Exactly.
So tell us about the golden pheasant. I mean, it happened in 1964 off Commerce Street.
Right. So the golden pheasant obviously was a restaurant, and you and I have talked about it. And I talked about the memorial that we had on the anniversary of it at 18s, where we have the pull box.
I'm going to be posting pictures of that.
That's neat. And they brought a bunch of the guys back that actually answered that fire. It was weird because there was a couple of guys that worked, and I don't know the mechanics. I know how it's supposed to work, but I don't know how it worked like this. We'll swing people from one station to another when we're short. Mm-hmm. Well, there's something to happen that I think one of the guys was supposed to be at 11s that day. They were short at 18s, so he's swinging to 18s. Shouldn't have been there, was there, and I don't think it was. I don't think it was Manley or Big. I'm pretty sure they were both 18s. But anyway, those 2 guys were my dad. He was pretty good friends with them because they both worked at the same station, different shifts, but they would see each other in the mornings, and so he's really considered them as personal friends. And so he said that we have in the fire department what's called a signal 17, and what that is when there's so many, when the fire has gotten so big, we've put all the alarms that we can put on it and bring in all the people that we can bring in and still leave the rest of the city protected. Then they put in a signal 17, which is where they call people in from off duty and have you come into work, and you'll go to the station and get your gear, and then you'll report to wherever they tell you to report. They hadn't had one of those since probably, I want to say maybe 84, 85. I think there was a Southland building downtown or whatever. I'm not real sure, but there was this one for sure, and there's a couple others that I'll bring up in a little bit.
Are
also.
they still the same call signs whenever?
Signal 17.
Still,
yeah.
Okay.
And that had to do with the I think with the Joker thing and those kind of things. I'm not real sure.
And now it's just tradition, kind of.
Just a tradition. Yeah. In fact, we used to have a magazine or a little pamphlet that they would put out telling things that were going on, and then they called it the Signal 17, kind of, so it's an all call for everybody to see and know what's going on.
We have those here. What's called Citywide Assist.
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
We don't. I don't think we have a particular code.
Okay. Yeah.
So Station 18 responded to that blaze.
Correct. And so I don't know if it was the A shift, B shift, C shift, but whichever shift it was, my dad was on the opposite shift. So they got the Signal 17. They all come in, and I didn't realize this. I'd heard the story quite a bit, but I didn't realize this until this last week when I was kind of just double checking the facts. That when he responded, they actually responded, got their firefighting gear, and went to the Golden Pheasant, and they were digging for the 2 guys. They dug most of the night trying to find them. They didn't find them at that time. Well, the next morning, they got the 3 guys that were there. They got the message, "Hey, we're supposed to go back to 18s." So as they were thinking, they couldn't figure out why they were going back there. They were still digging. Well, so when they got back there, their captain, who was Captain Boyd, he was sitting there, and they said, "Well, what's going on, Cap?" He said, "Well," so when he came in on the 17 to get his gear, he was ordered to stay at the station. And come to find out, Bigham's son had come in the night before to spend the night with him. He was still upstairs asleep, and his dad had just been killed in the Golden Pheasant fire, and they were afraid that he would get up and hear or whatever what was going on. So Captain Boyd and then the rest of the 18's crew, when they left the dig, went back to the station and stayed there until some of the family members from this.
So they had to get a death notification.
Yes, yeah, had to get out there and get that, and then have somebody come to be with the son while all that was going on.
And so the fire started in the basement, correct?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
And then it just went up, and I was reading that on the 3rd floor of that building, the entire building got engulfed. And the 3rd floor was they had a printing press with a lot of heavy machinery that just fell straight down through and basically on top of them collapsed, and then they were trapped at the bottom.
Trapped, yep, for sure. That's the way I understand it also.
And your father responded to this as well?
He responded on the 17 to help dig them out.
Okay.
He was one of the ones, like I said, they called everybody, all the alarms, which, you go to, I think, may have gone to 5 alarms at that time. to where you bring people in from wherever, but you still have to leave enough to protect everybody else. And so that's why they had to get the manpower in. They had plenty of equipment there, engines, trucks, tools. They just needed more manpower.
And he was there when they
the next day. Yeah, I think they ended up clearing up after the Bingham family came and got the son. They came back and they were able to go back down and start helping dig again. And then Manley was one of the other ones. The other two he didn't know so well, so I don't know as much about them. I hate that I don't know enough to say more about them. But like Manley, who was also there, he was supposed to make driver that year. He'd taken a promotional test and would have made driver that year. So
he didn't quite.
Didn't get it.
So we were talking about Jim Gresham, Ron Manley,
right.
Jerry Henderson, and Jim Bigham.
Yeah, and I think the Gresham or Henderson, I think some of them were the ones. And like I said, there was a couple of guys that were at that memorial that year. Chief Jones, Mike Jones, he just retired.
Over 60 years.
Yeah, 60 years. He was 81 or 2. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, and people would always say, he's too old to be a fireman, whatever. There was a lot of people that said. So he was at Station 8. He was Battalion 3, and I'm Battalion 1. We answered together a lot. We'd be high rises or whatever. And that guy, he never quit. I mean, when it had his firefighting gear on, his SCBA on, and I mean, he was hitting the stairs. He could be doing it right now, and you'd never know.
Well, yeah, he just retired last year.
Yeah.
I mean, here
just within the last year, maybe not even a full year yet.
And he done over 60.
Oh yeah. He was also he left and was a Marine during Vietnam.
That's 2 full careers if you do 30 years and 3
exactly.
careers if you
that's
do
a
20.
long career.
Exactly.
Well, we got our Captain McLean here who's got like 50 going on 56 years, but
wow.
I mean, he got here.
And like I say,
he was
never
a chief, right? When he left,
battalion chief. He was
same
Battalion
rank
3,
as you.
Same rank as I am, Battalion 3. I enjoyed working with. It's one of the things that I really am glad I got to do was to work with him and answer fires with him. He was a lot of fun. I mean, when he was on the fire ground, those guys knew who was in control. He made sure they knew, and that's kind of the old school way of doing things. Is I'm not worried about your feelings. I'm not worried about what you think.
You got a job to do.
You got a job to do, and you're going to do it, or you're going to. And he's sent people home before. They wouldn't. You have fire boiling out the windows. It's like, hey, if you're not going to do it, we'll get somebody here that will.
Yeah. So shout out Johnny Sanchez. He's always listening to these, and he loves that you're coming on. But he's always telling me the Chief Jones stories, and I try. He's asked. He goes, "Oh, I don't want to be part of that." But I get it.
I might try again. He just did one here not too long ago for a guy, one of the firemen that does it. I can't remember the guy's name. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, hell, get him.
Reach
out.
I will.
I mean, no,
I will.
I mean, he's got such a.
He can give you a lot more background.
So he was actually there.
Yeah, he was actually in. He was one of the ones that might not have supposed to have been there. Like I said, I'm speaking way out of turn because I don't remember, but I know that he was in that mix of, and like for instance, if you have an engine and a truck at a station, if one of them's riding short, you may move the guy from the truck to the engine, and I think one of those things happened. One of the guys that did get killed, may have been supposed to have been on another piece of equipment at that time, but just so happened, kind of like when you hear people that were changed flights or whatever, and it's like, man,
it was this terrible fate.
Exactly.
Terrible fate lined up. And,
exactly.
And that is, it's still looked at as the worst fire in Dallas history because you lost four firefighters that night. Yep. And that was kind of like our July 7th, 2016.
Right.
We lost.
Oh, yeah.
So that it was.
Yeah, it sticks with you forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
And hopefully that record never will be broken.
No
hopefully.
doubt. And they should stick with us forever, and the citizens and everybody else.
Well, that's one thing on the show we always talk about. We want these men and women to be more than just a portrait on the wall that are hanging up somewhere and forgotten. Because this more I read about this golden pheasant fire, I mean, I've learned quite a bit about it over the past few months, and it's a fascinating time, especially in such a compact area of downtown Dallas.
Yep.
And it was a very high-end steakhouse, and then I also read there was like possibly it was an arson.
That's what I heard. I've heard the same thing.
Yeah,
I've heard the same thing. And it's one thing in those type of things. It's hard to figure it out because there's so
technology
much.
was not there.
There's nothing. It was mostly eyes, and then everything's on top of it. You start moving layer by layer out to get to the point where it started. But going back to the you're talking about the pictures on the wall in our academy. We've got them lined down the rookies where the people that have lost their life. And when I was out there as a captain, we had a deputy chief at the time, Steve Bass, and he was big on tradition, not in a bad way, in a good way. But he made sure those young guys and girls went by and looked at them, and they didn't necessarily have to memorize the name and the date, but they better know a little bit about it, because he would come across and say, "Hey, what about so and so?" You know, and they better know a little bit about so and so. You know,
yeah.
And I think that we're missing that a lot in our department.
We are too.
Yeah.
I mean, we are as well. We have some now. We're starting to do the. I don't know if you saw the street toppers that we're actually putting out, and that is a great,
very good,
great honor for these fallen heroes. But you're reading about some of these that lost their life. There was a lot of strange incidents.
Yes,
electrocution. I mean, there was a lot of very strange incidents going back to the late 1800s.
Yeah, a lot of ours in the old days were actually in response to, while they were responding, you know, wrecks or maybe falling off the apparatus, or because they used to ride on the back and hang on. So there's those kind of things. Yeah, we had the one in Deep Ellum here within the last 6 or 7 months, the street toppers.
Yes.
We set a couple of engines down there to kind of help honor that.
Yeah, they're doing a great job with that.
Yes,
the family,
I think so.
and the families really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's happening. So, when did you decide you wanted to get into firefighting like your dad?
Well, so, man, I said in here as I was writing this, you know, there's no pun intended, but it sure sounds like it. I never really had a burning desire to be a fireman. Just never. I don't know why. It just never really dawned on me. I bounced around. I was in my younger 20s when I got on. I bounced around different things like most guys in their younger 20s, and I was in this place up in Richardson. It was some kind of a telecommunications business, and it was kind of neat, but it was kind of a cutthroat deal. I mean, I noticed one guy who was a director over a department, and he took a vacation, and while he was gone, this other guy snaked in there and took his department. This guy comes back, and he's now, instead of having his department, he's working for this other guy that, and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to be a part of, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, and then growing up, and it's weird that I didn't really have a whole lot, because my dad, he did talk about different things at times. Most of the time it was about other guys. I got a guy on here, his name's Ronnie Henson. He actually won a Medal of Valor. They had a fire in a leather store on the east end of downtown. They were all working at Ford's at the time, and there was a truck and an engine and a squad. A manpower squad back then was like a Suburban. It would carry 4 or 5 firefighters and their all their gear, and then they would get there, and then they would be used to either use a nozzle and help put out fire or do truck work, whatever. So Ronnie was actually on the squad, and my dad was a captain on the truck. Well, as they got in, they were looking around doing it and said, the truck usually does ventilation, where there's cutting holes in the roof or opening windows and doors to try to get some air circulating in there where it gets the smoke up and out. So he was walking around back to make sure that was getting done back there. And about the time, he said he got about halfway back there, he said all of a sudden the building just caves in. And he said, man, guys are running out, like rats off a sinking ship trying to get out of there. Well, he goes back around, and they didn't have radios for everybody. The officers had them, the drivers had them, but, you do a lot of hollering back and forth. So they stuck in there, hollered, and said, hey, y'all need to get out of here. Ronnie and a guy named Jerry Kitchens, I think he was a lieutenant at the time, they were still in there. And so they said, get out. Ronnie hollered back out and said, hey, man, I can't come out. He said, because I'll say Lou. He said, Lou's, he's trapped. And he said, all that's basically showing from him is his hand and just a little bit of his arm. And so Ronnie had a hold of that. He said, if I leave him, he said, there's no way we're going to find him. So with them doing their best to get him out of there, he never would come out. And with that being said, so when I got on the drill tower, when I got on rookie school, Jerry Kitchens was the academy commander. He had promoted to captain at that time. And because of his injuries, he was not allowed to be able to go back to the fire station because the burns areas and stuff were so tender that if he got exposed to heat, whatever, it would bother him even more. So, not only did Ronnie help save his life, he helped save his career to where he could continue on as a fireman. And as a side note, Ronnie's son, his name is John. He's a lieutenant out at 23s, which is off of Corinth and in the Oak Cliff area. But yeah, Ronnie was he was kind of a larger than life guy. Still is to a lot of the guys in the department, larger than life type guy. You never had to tell Ronnie what to do. There's a lot of guys, you have to say, hey man, you need to put your uniform on, you need to do this, you need to take your shirt tail in, whatever. Ronnie he was never that guy. He was always, and he was fun, had a great sense of humor. He wasn't, he wasn't one of these stoic guys that, you just kind of standoffish. He was always in the middle of everything, agitating and having a good time. But
He's one of the guys.
Yeah, one of the guys, and like I say, a true hero. You hear that a lot, but he actually was.
Yeah, to stay there, decide to stay inside a building like that
when everybody else is leaving. I mean, they were the only two in there. Now, you hear about the stolen valor and those kind of things. We had several guys that, from what I understand, that tried to put themselves in for, for commendations.
Right.
And I almost said accommodations. Then they probably needed accommodations in Terrell
Yeah.
State for some of the stuff that they conjured up.
Them there.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you decided to get in, how that process look like then? No, when you get applied.
So when I came on, they were. I guess they'd already been paramedics for a good while, but for some reason or another, they were running classes through pretty quickly. Some guys were having it right before me. Were having a lot of trouble getting on, but they were hiring pretty heavily when I tried in mid to late '85, and because I started trying to get on in '85, and I want to say maybe July. I don't know exactly when, but by October I was already on the department. Went out we were at Record Crossing at the times where our drill tower was, which was where it had been, I guess, since maybe the 40s, 30s, somewhere like that.
Wow. Was your father on the? He'd already left.
No, he didn't leave. He didn't leave until '91. I got on in '85, so he was. I think he had moved to the Grove by then. I'm not sure. He spent
back when it was Pleasant.
Yeah, back when it was Pleasant Grove. He, like I say, he spent the majority. I would imagine he's worked 31 years. I would imagine he spent 27, maybe 28 of it in either between 18s and 4s. And then towards the end of his career, he decided to move out. We lived in Kaufman. That was a little bit closer to home, easier to get to, not fighting the downtown stuff. But yeah, he was moved out there. I want to say sometime, but that's where he was when I got on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you started out. You got on. What was the culture of? I'm gonna say DFD.
So DFD culture, it's funny because you hear all the histories of, obviously, and so in '85, and I'm not sure exactly when this stopped, but at one point in time, if a captain told you to put your badge on the table, you were fired. I mean, that was just it. I'm sure it was the same in the police department. It would have had to have been the same in the police department. But I mean, I'm sure he had to have a decent reason, but I don't know that he did because nobody questioned him, not even the people above him. He said, "You're gone. You're gone." That was not going on when I was there, but some of the guys that I worked for, my captains and lieutenants, they were obviously a part of that when they came on as rookies or whatever. So they got to see a lot of that kind of thing. So they did run the stations a little bit, a lot of them, a lot more strict.
It's sad because, I mean, some of it just may be like, this guy's an asshole. I'm going to get rid of him.
Very easily could have been. Very easily could have been. So I think there was some good in that, but I definitely know how leadership can be abused, and you know good and well it was abused in like that, in those type of situations. I think that we've neutered them. A lot of times we've neutered our officers now to where it's like they can say, do this. And we had a guy before, the captain told him to make coffee, and he said no. Nothing ever happened. He just didn't make the coffee. So
back then,
and that's something small.
Yeah,
back then it would have been disregarding an order, and he'd have been fired, and probably rightfully so. Even though it was just making coffee, the captain told you to make coffee, you make coffee. That's not like that.
No, it ain't like that now. So, what, as far as diversity, what was it like back then, '85?
See, and that's another. And this is going to sound, I guess, naive, but I didn't realize that much that there was a diversity type thing because they were hiring quotas, but most of the guys I came on with, you didn't realize that. You just all were in the same boat,
all in the same family,
all in the same boat, and that kind of thing. Obviously, that's looking at it from my perspective. Their perspective probably was a lot different. They could say, well, it was nothing like what you saw, but from what I saw, it was just and plus I was raised in a small town, so we had athletics and that kind of stuff. Everybody just got along,
right? As it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've had on Lindsay on before, and he was kind of talking about when the AIDS epidemic hit and how scary that was.
Yeah,
because this was kind of it was right in
the
heart of
that. Right on the almost the tip of the spear of it, and I guess it was scary, but then it was. For both, I guess, scary and not scary for the same reason because nobody knew anything about it. So you didn't really know enough what to be scared of, Then, because back then, when you would start an IV, obviously you didn't want to get stuck with a needle because of hepatitis or whatever else that the person could have. So a lot of times you just take that needle and you stick it in the cushion of the bench that sets like the paramedics.
Oh, yeah.
There with the bench over. So I mean, everybody just do that. Well, then all of a sudden people got to think, oh, hold on a second, because you're going to get little drops of blood that fall out of it into that cushion. And then it's like, uh-oh, what are we going to do now? And then people started wearing, nobody would ever wear gloves. I mean, back in then, you'd have guys that have firefighting gear that was all smoked up. Well, you'd see paramedics drenched in, not drenched in blood, but blood, in their clothes and whatever. When AIDS started coming around, that kind of stuff started slowing down quite a bit. And people started being a little bit more aware. Yeah, a little bit more cautious and taking precautions to not be exposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, all you knew, it was just at that point it was killing folks.
Exactly.
That's what.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, it wasn't like, well, it's going to kill some, it won't kill others. If you got if you're strong, you got a good immune system,
right?
You'll be okay. It was indiscriminate. You got it. You were dying.
Yep.
You were part of DFD for a long time, and your father was DFD his entire career. How did the change from DFD to DFR really go?
Oh, man, I'm glad you brought that up. So this was going to be talked about later on. It didn't go well at all. Not at all. And it still doesn't go – it's still not well. And, and I'm not throwing anything at y'all's new chief, but it would be to the thing if he comes in and decides, okay, I'm going to call y'all the Dallas Police and Drug Enforcement Agency from this point forward. You're not going to be the Dallas Police Department anymore. You're going to be the Dallas Police and Drug Enforcement Agency. And that's what happened to our guy. He came in from Miami. There was Miami Fire Rescue, I think. So he changes us to Dallas Fire Rescue. Well, we've been the Dallas Fire Department forever, and all of a sudden a new guy comes into town. That's who he's going to make us. And when you look at it, most of your bigger departments, they're still not fire rescue. You don't see New York Fire Rescue. You don't see Boston Fire Rescue, Los Angeles. They're always the Los Angeles Fire Department. So we take a lot of pride in being the Dallas Fire Department. And there's still guys now that won't even say Dallas Fire Rescue. We're made to wear the Dallas Fire Rescue thing, but we've approached different chiefs at times and say, hey, can you get us back? And there's always it's going to cost $2 million to change it back. It's like, well, hold on, you're taking letters away now. It surely didn't. It would have cost more to put the rescue on there than to take rescue off of our gear. I mean, we're taking stuff away.
DFD just rolls out the tongue.
It does. DFR is just
and
I mean. It is a bone of contention with a lot of guys. And it would be like,
I've heard.
With our Sarkeesian going to the University of Texas from Alabama and saying, hey, okay, we're not going to be the Longhorns anymore. We're going to change the color from burnt orange and white to, maroon. Yeah, we're going to be the West Side roll Tide. Yeah, exactly.
West Side Tide.
Yeah, the West Side Tide.
Well, I've talked to quite a few of your people, and that is a sore subject.
It's terribly sore.
We're doing these little custom patches that I made sure that it's the original. The original Dallas Fire Department logo.
And guys have noticed that too.
Yeah.
They really have. I mean, when you came by the station that day, we went in after you showed it a minute. Man, this is Dallas Fire Department.
As it should be.
Exactly.
It's a novelty.
Maybe when if you can get Chief, we can talk Chief Ball into coming on here.
Yeah, he's already said he's come on.
We'll pressure him, and you can put pressure on him to get us back to the Dallas Fire Department.
I need you to put the full court press on him.
Oh well, I'll talk to him. He's a good guy.
So you've worked many assignments, and you're going on 40 years. This year will be 40 years. This November, it'll be 40.
Right.
So what are some of your favorite assignments?
So when I came out of rookie school, I went to 18s, and I really enjoyed that. At 18s at that time, downtown was kind of dead. There wasn't a lot of residents, wasn't a lot of restaurants or those kind of things. But 18 station was the new station. We had 2 engines, a truck, a chief's car, and 820, which is an air wagon. So there's probably about 18 people assigned there. So you come out as a new guy from rookie school, and there's another 15, 16 people there because we only arrived with 4. There's a lot of eyes on you, but I really enjoyed it. There was a bunch of good guys, good friends of mine. There's a guy named Don Reed that was on the opposite shift, and he retired here. I worked with him in the Grove forever. I mean, he's one of my favorite people. Got a lot of good stories about him. I relieved Goat. We talked about Goat a while ago. Mm-hmm. His dad was a fireman down at 18s, and I was his relief guy in the morning. So that's how I got to know. His name is Mikey, and I knew Mikey real good fireman. And then, like I say, he's got another son that's a captain at 25s, which is in Oak Cliff. His name's Scott. But then Goat is and like I say, they live at hometown is Italy. I think we have more firefighters named Hiles on the fire department than the town of Italy has.
You have so many legacy.
Yes, we do.
Firefighters here.
Yes, we do.
That's really neat.
It is.
Y'all have like generations.
Yes,
of
generational
names.
type things. Yeah, for sure.
Can you describe that family atmosphere inside this?
Yeah, as I was looking at that, it's weird. Like I mentioned, Don Reed. I talked to him today. Even today, I'll call him or he'll call me, and just so you develop relationships sitting around the fire station at the kitchen table. I think a long time ago, families would sit around their dinner table and share and talk, about their day and that kind of stuff. I don't know that they do as much now. Everybody's so busy.
On their phone.
Yeah, they're on their phone and they're so busy. Once the phone's another thing. It's invading our department terribly. But a lot of times, in fact, the other day I was upstairs, and so I thought, well, I'll go downstairs see what everybody's doing. I'm going to talk to them, and I looked. There's about 7 of them sitting at the kitchen table. All of them had their phone out. I thought, well, I came down to read my phone. I said, I didn't want to do it by myself. I said, so I'm going to sit over here.
Yeah.
And
they're probably texting each other.
Everybody, exactly. And then everybody puts their phone away and you start talking. But, yeah, we usually around supper time, we'll eat. Sometimes we try to get between 5 and 6 o'clock when they usually try to get it on the table. But, man, it's a lot of times it'll be 9 o'clock. You'll sit there for 3 or 4 hours talking about just different things. And then the traditional type things and the culture of the department. Now, one of the things I was going back with Don Reed as far as like the culture of the fire department itself has a culture, obviously, and we hear cultural diversity and those kind of things, and so we're supposed to accept that, and I agree with that. But the fire department and the police department, in and of themselves, have their own culture. So some of that culture needs to also be assimilated into these people's lives. If they're going to come be a part of the police department or fire department, they got to realize, hey, I'm coming into a culture, and
it is an ecosystem you got to be a part of.
Exactly, and you got to want to be a part of it, And so when I first made chief, I went back to the state in the Grove. I actually went to 5s, and Don Reed, who I'd known at 18s, at that time we were at stationed at 5s, Battalion 8 was, which is on St. Augustine and Bruton, which was a war zone, and to some extent still is.
Well, yeah, because think about it. We've had on in the early to mid '90s the Jamaican drug wars that were going on.
Exactly.
Y'all
even put a camera up on the corner there at that little convenience store car wash. We got bullet holes all in 5s. I can remember it at night. Man, you hear guys be laying on the floor, because I'll go back to Don Reed in just a second about that. But I'd hired back after I moved downtown. I hired back and went back out to 8 District. There was an opening out there, and we got a call, said, hey, man, they just shot the station, so we had to go over and do an investigation. Well, we're standing out there looking at it. They opened up on it again. I mean, we're diving behind a wall, and some of these other guys making fun of me, saying I was the one that dove behind the wall. And I said, well, you were right there beside me. You weren't out there trying to fight the bullets off, but they don't see it that way. But as far as the culture, each station has its own, obviously, and even though I'd known him forever, and when I got there, their culture, their tradition culture was whoever the newest person is at the station puts the flag out in the morning. And I was the chief, and so he brings the flag to me. And most guys think, the chief's not going to. He brought it to me. I put the flag up for about, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, and then that was all. He proved kind of to him, hey, this is y'all's. I'm coming to be part of y'all.
Right.
Y'all don't have to be part of me.
The symbolic.
Exactly. And then from there on out, I never put it in. We had a captain that came a little bit later than that, and he wouldn't do it. They tried the same tactic with him, and he felt he was above, which I don't understand it, because the flag, there's so much pride in the flag anyway, but it's just a menial task, I guess, for the lack of a better phrase. And
I bet he was really accepted, huh?
Oh, yeah. No, he was not.
Yeah, that's weird.
Exactly. He never did really fit in that well with them. But, yeah, so there was that. One of the other cultural things, I think, in most fire stations, a lot of them are like this. Some of them are across the board like this, but a lot of them are individuals. It's the time we get to work in the morning and the time we leave. So our relief time is at 7 o'clock in the morning. Traditionally, everybody would try to get there before 6:30. But the station I'm at and most of the stations I've been, most of our guys get there around 5:30 in the morning, between 5 and 5:30. So that's 2 hours early. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of times they're ready to get there because they want to be a part of it. They're also realizing, like I say, down where we are, that ambulance has been busy the night before. The engines have been busy, so you're trying to let those guys get a break. So if a run comes in at 5 o'clock, they're not having to jump on it. And then, like I say, you get there and you'll sit around and talk to each other for whatever time. But also, what's weird, and I was thinking about this the other morning, you're sitting at the kitchen table at your relief time when you're fixing to go home, and you look up, it'll be 7:30. And you've been relieved for an hour and a half, and you're sitting there talking to some of the new guys that are coming on duty.
Worked all night.
But you're also talking to some of the guys that you spent 24 hours with, and you're carrying on a conversation that you could have had the day before, on the city's time rather than on your own time. But it's just that type of environment, a family environment where you enjoy being around each other.
Well, it's in a lot of ways, it's a lot of maybe like a debrief.
Yeah, it is.
And
it truly is. I mean, I think that's another thing we'll probably talk about a little bit later too, if you help me remember during the mental health part of this thing. But I think that's a lot of the reasons that they didn't have as many of those problems back in the day, those days, as we do now. Yeah. They did debrief. They did talk things out. They didn't have phones. The old fire stations, this one where I'm at right now, it's what's one of the best things about it. They used to have dorm type bedrooms where you walked in and they're just wide open bedrooms with just beds everywhere. Now, most of the newer stations are having cubicles. So now not only do you not sit around the kitchen table and talk that much, when it's time to go to bed, you go to bed and you go into your own little private cubicle and you don't share. Back when I was at 34s, it was a wide open bedroom. And I mean, I can remember you'd lay back there at night and you'd almost, carry on conversations of course, this will be way above or way beyond a lot of people's thinking, but where the Waltons used to say, "Good night, John Boy." You'd hear the family all good night. So you wouldn't say good night to each other, but you'd have conversations until
sweet dream.
Exactly. You'd have conversations until you finally just drifted off to sleep,
I bet it pissed them off if people were bad snorers.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
There's like a chainsaw going on.
Yeah, there are guys that can make noise that you wouldn't even think were human.
We have a good sleep apnea sleep study place. We'll start. It takes our insurance. I'll get it
for
to
sure,
you.
for sure. Because we got some guys that really need it.
Start laying it on people's pillows.
Under the pillow and under the.
We do have
sheets.
guys that have those masks now.
The CPAP.
Yeah, that we have several guys that are in those now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's for one, you can't sleep, but also it's a quality of life thing too. I just had a sleep study done, and I had to get a mouth guard. And I don't want to. I can't wear the fighter mask.
Yeah. What I always found odd too is when the guy would snore, he was the only guy asleep. It's like, okay, this doesn't make no sense to me. The guy that is getting to sleep, that's keeping everybody else awake. It's, why aren't you throwing stuff at him and making him, keeping him awake?
Or just clapping. That way they wake up. They don't know what woke them up.
Yeah.
And you're just, right.
Yeah, and like you just said, the fighter jet thing, you sound like Darth Vader over there.
Yeah. Same thing.
Exactly.
Like you're about to make a bombing run on the
exactly.
So you all the many calls that you've gone on, I mean, I can't imagine just the firefighting alone, the medical emergencies you've had to go out on with, what are some of the tough ones that kind of stick with you that stand out?
So, it's weird. I didn't even really have to think about them that much, as far as, the ones, but there was the ones I remember the most, obviously, and I think most firemen would say this, would be kids involved. Same thing with police. I mean, the ones you're going to always go back. Somebody comes and say, "Hey, what's the worst thing you've ever done?" Worst one. It's always going to be where kids are involved. So obviously it's that, and then also when there's just a fire victim, because you've burned your hand before, or whatever, so you know what kind of pain they're going through. But some of the ones that as I was going through it, so when I first got out of rookie school, I went to 18s, like I said, and so you can sub for one, like if a guy on B shift needed off, you could sub for him, and then he would sub for you later on. Well, I was hadn't been out of rookie school very long at all, and he asked me to sub for him, B shifter. So I subbed for him. Well, at that time, the Arcadia Theater was over, I think off of Greenville or somewhere there. Anyway, they had a big fire there. It burned, went to a multiple barn fire. So everybody over that area was busy. We filled in, they moved us closer. So we make a run out there, and it's a medical emergency or something to do with an infant. So we get there, and there's a mom. She's sitting on the bottom step of the stairs of a garage apartment, and I mean, she's wailing. I mean, you can just the pain. You can feel the pain that she's going through at that time, and she's talking about her baby. And so we walk upstairs. You get upstairs, and she had put the baby in a crib, and somehow or another he had, got in between the mattress and the mattress pad and suffocated. I mean, he was as blue as the line on that your poster there. So, you try to do stuff, try to do CPR. It's not going to do any good, but you try to do it for that. So that's one of the ones I remember early on. Another one. When I first got on the ambulance, I was out in the Casalinda area, and we answered White Rock. I mean, Lake Ray Hubbard at that time, White Rock Lake for sure, but also Lake Ray Hubbard. Well, we get a call of a person that's been, I don't know, stabbed or cut or whatever, and there's police detectives around. I understand why they're detectives now, because they can sense things so well. We get there and they say, "Hey, we think she's dead, obviously." So we roll her over, and her head her head's almost completely cut off, and it's like, so you're pretty sure she's dead. Yeah, good call on that. But yeah, no kidding, we rolled her over, and I mean, her head there was just maybe half an inch of skin that was the only thing keeping her head on her body. So obviously, that one would be in one of the very first ones. Had a run where a young kid in the White Rock Lake area, they had a little tree house way back in the back, and it had a little trap door that you could flop open with a partner of mine. It was about this time of year, as a matter of fact. The kid had shot himself in the head, and I mean, there was blood all over the place. And at this time, there was it was this time of the year where caterpillars and worms, and I mean, so they had crawled all through that. And I mean, you could just see little blood trails, and the kid was alive. I mean, he still had a pulse, and so we had to actually transport him. We transported him to Parkland. He ended up dying, but those were the ones that kind of stand out. But then there's also the fire ones, I guess. I remember we had one at when I was in Pleasant Grove. I was a chief by the next few years. I was already a chief. One of them was Christmas time, and there's a little area over behind Southeast Substation that's called Hungry Heights. I don't know if y'all call it that or not. The fire department's always called it Hungry Heights. Don't know why. So it was Christmas, and there was a family of 6, and we're sitting there, and the house is just rolling, smoke's boiling out of it, and all 6 of them died. I mean, and I can still remember we had a guy named Lieutenant Wilcox, and I can still see, I mean, to this day, I can still see him running across the front yard to 734, which is what our ambulances are. 734, that little baby or little infant, it wasn't an infant, it was probably 5, 6, 7 years old. But I mean, the arms were just flopping, his head was bobbing. I mean, just dead. Then we had a couple more in the, it was up around what they call Bruton Terrace, up around Jim Miller Bruton in that area. It was a family of 4 that died of CO, carbon monoxide. Okay. Grandmother, granddad, and their grandkids.
And that's hard. And that's got to be hard.
Yeah, it was harder on some guys than I really figured it would have been. I mean, I should have been a little bit more in tune with what was going on. We'll talk about that when we get to the mental health thing too. But yeah, I was not aware that had hit some of the guys as much. And then we had one more. Before I got down here, there's a guy named Howard Russell. He was the battalion chief. He's kind of like Chief Jones. He's been on forever. Real well respected battalion chief.
He's still on?
No, he retired about 8. He retired. I took his place when he retired. So he was the reason I got to come to Battalion 1, which is what I wanted to do for a while. I was leading into the fact that he has a son that's on. He's a captain, but at this time he was a lieutenant. He worked out off St. Augustine and right off of St. Augustine and Sigerville Road. And so we made another fire. It's down kind of, I want to say off of Murdo and that little area down there. And we get there, and the house is pretty much on fire from front to back. And there's a mom standing out front, and I mean, she's again just hysterical, and obviously, and rightfully so. And she was able to get out, but she couldn't get back to her baby, and the baby was less than a year old. It was in the crib still. And so Lieutenant Russell Bryan and then his driver, his name Nelson Bolanos, they came up and they said, "Hey, we think we can get in there to the side and at least try, or at least let her know that we're trying," because we pretty much knew there was no way the baby was going to be alive with everything. But you still wanted the mom to feel like, "Hey, we tried."
Yeah, you don't want to be
exactly
finalize that
exactly. And so that's what they said. "Hey, you care if we try?" I said, "Man." So I told Brian, I said, "Hey, when you get there, if you think you can do," I said, "but maybe you get too far in and you can't," I said, "get back out." So they did. They got in. They got the baby out, and it was dead. But they ended up getting burned, not severely, but bad enough that they were off for several shifts, nursing their wounds before they could get back. But yeah, those are the kind of calls that.
Because it's families.
Yeah,
and there are children that really can't take care of themselves.
Right, exactly.
And you have a family.
Right. And you always can superimpose that up on on whatever scene you're in if you try.
Yeah. See, it's not hard to do.
Yeah, it's not at all.
Well, I would imagine like when the you have the members of your fire family that
Right.
go through and take you back, like the Jeff Patterson
Yes.
incident.
Yep.
He's actually come on the show, and can you kind of talk about that from your perspective?
So from where I was with Jeff, and so I want to preface this with obviously what Jeff went through and what his family went through. My experience is nothing to that. You know, a lot of times people will start telling me, and this is what I did. I don't want this to come across as that, because every bit of this is about Jeff, Tina, and then their kids and family. But so we're there, and I've still got a manila folder at the station with the whole run and how fast everything. I mean, it was amazing at how fast everything turned sideways on us. It was up off of Jim Miller and Forney Road in that little area. Houses were, you know, pretty nice size houses, a couple thousand square feet probably. Anyway, maybe 1,800. So they got there and they get inside, and then we get there a little bit. Battalion 8 gets there a little bit later, and then Battalion 3 is coming. Also, a friend of mine named Wade Walker. He was Battalion 3 at the time, and so Engine 44, which is coming from Fair Park, Engine 32 is coming right down the road from Jim Miller, and then 53s is coming across from John West, Engine 53, Truck 53, and we have Truck 24 coming from South Dallas off of Hatcher. So we all get there. Well, they're inside, doesn't look bad at all, and as I'm walking up, when we have two battalion chiefs there, one usually goes to the back, and the other one will stay in the front and keep an eye on everything. One of them's a safety officer, but he still does a few other things too. So I was walking to the back, and I was going to be safety officer. It was our first in, but they were able to beat us. So usually what happens is the first chief in is in command, and the other was, as I was trying to go back there, I couldn't get to the backyard because it was blocked off. So I hollered over Wade and said, "Hey, I'm going to have to walk down this way." He was already on that end. He said, "Hey, I got it. I'll be the safety officer. You just be in command." So we're sitting out front. Started looking at everything, and I was talking to Wade, and I said, "Hey, this isn't getting any better." So I said, "We're going to try to get them out." So I start telling them to get out, and I can remember exactly the words I used and how many times I used them. It's amazing when this stuff happens. So anyway, told them to get out, and talking to some of the guys that were inside, it's like, well, what's he telling us to get out for? It's not that bad in here, but it was getting bad outside. So anyway, the guys start trying to work their way that way, and everybody gets out, and I knew basically everybody there by name, especially the officers. So I was looking at the captain off of 53s, and I said, "You got all your guys?" We do a PAR when that kind of thing happens, personal accountability to roll call. Yeah. So in fact, that's kind of what I was telling you about a while ago when the thing happened with Kitchens and Ronnie Henson. They didn't call it a PAR back then. Nowadays, we have to name everything. Back then, it was just called firefighting. But we come up with the terminology and stuff to make it sound a lot more impressive. But anyway, so usually what we'll do when you've lost somebody, well, at that time I didn't know we'd lost somebody, but you'll tell the chief's drivers, and they'll get on the radio and they'll say, "Hey," they'll start taking a PAR. But since I knew everybody, I still told them to do a PAR, but I was trying to do it quick because that's all face to face. Talked to the guys at 53s, said, "Yeah, we got our guys." Talked to the guys at 32s, 24s. They were our safety team, or our RIC team, the rescue team that would have gone in for somebody. So I knew they were okay. Talked to 53s and 32s. They were all good. So I turned around and talked to Bill Merle. He's the lieutenant on the 44 engine. And I said, "Have you got everybody?" He said, "Yeah, I got everybody." He said, Scott was with. He said Jeff was with Scott. Scott Mitchell was on the ambulance over there. Scott, he was kneeled down taking his face piece off. He said, "No." He said, "Last time I saw Jeff, he was on your hip pocket coming out the door." So I looked down. I said, "We've lost Jeff." So I turned back around. I told the other guys, I said, "Hey, Jeff's not here. We're going back in." Because as bad as it was for us to get them out, Wade and I to pull them out, because by that time Wade had already come back around front so we could get a game plan going. As bad as it was to get them out, it still wasn't bad enough that we were not going to go back in and get Jeff. So that's what I told him. I said, "Hey, let's gear back up. We've got to go back in and get Jeff." Wade, being the second chief in, he started getting his gear because he was going to help lead the search for that. But anyway, as they were getting geared back up, one of the guys, his name's nicknamed Woody Barber, he looked in the window and he could see Jeff in there trying to get out. So they were able to get him out of there. And and every bit of this happened in like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And
right.
We put as soon as we found out what Jeff was missing, that's what I turned around and told our command tech, "Hey, put a second alarm on it. We've lost a firefighter." And so at that point in time, other companies start coming. Well, 807 is our deputy chief, and at that time he was off of Irving Boulevard. This was the night of our banquet also, for awards banquet. The guy, the 807, he was coming from Irving Boulevard, and he was clear. He said when he was clearing downtown, he looked and he could see Rescue or 732 heading over Woodall Rogers to go to Parkland, and that had Jeff in it. I mean, that's how fast. But as it was happening, it was like it was in slow motion. You'll hear people. Wah, wah. And when as I was doing things and talking, it's almost like everything was just in a time warp. It was amazing.
Things slow down.
And then so over the next. Man, it seemed like the next 10 years while Jeff was in the hospital. It wasn't obviously that long. I'm being facetious on the 10 years, but it was just, and I know and that's why I said a while ago, I wanted to preface it that everything that I think I'm going through, I know they were going through a whole lot, but I would go to the hospital quite regularly and visit with Tina and Jeff, and we're very good friends with both of them. But you would be, as I mentioned earlier, being a Christian, and we would pray for him in church, pray for him. Bill Merle, his lieutenant, was a Christian guy. We'd pray for him. But I can remember I had a part-time business doing yards and stuff, and I can remember thinking, so when we pulled him out and we're thinking, oh man, this is terrible, they get his face piece off and he said, oh man, I hurt. And so we're all thinking, great, I mean, we don't want you to hurt, but you're talking to us, so we're feeling very good about that. But then man, so then come to find out, it's kind of like when you let meat stand after you've taken it off the grill, it still continues, and that's what they were telling us that was going on with him. Even though we were out, he was still, so they could get that internal temperature down, he was still kind of cooking, so to speak, for lack of a better phrase, on the inside. So all that was going on, and then you would hear, we'd get good word that, hey, Jeff's making some improvement. Everything looks like it's going to be good. And then the next thing you know, the next day you get a call, hey, he's got a fungus in his lungs, and it doesn't look like Jeff's going to make it. And you're sitting out there, and I mean, just the emotions of, good gosh, this guy could lose his life, and here I am responsible for making sure that he gets home in the morning, that kind of a thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on too, on the leadership thing. But yeah, it was, and like I said, I know it had to be on Tina, and then I won't mention their kids' names on the air, but I know the little boy, their son and daughter, they when they see their dad, they see the scars and the things. But yeah, Jeff, and I'd known Jeff when he got out of rookie school. He actually came to the Grove for a short time at 34s, so I'd known him since that point in time. But yeah, it was some kind of an event, I'm gonna tell you.
Well, I could see you talking about it. I could see the emotions coming up because you as a chief, you take ownership. And,
definitely.
His people's safety.
Yeah, his scars are kind of. I mean, I won't say they're my fault, but they are definitely my accountability. I'm accountable for what happened to him in that fire.
Because you were one of the bosses.
Because I was the guy. Yeah.
That's a lot to carry.
Yes, it is. But and that's why I wanted to try to minimize that, because it's not near what he has to carry.
Of course.
The actual physical scars, and then he can't go back to a fire station either. Kind of like Captain Kitchens I was telling you about before. So Jeff is a lieutenant. He promoted to lieutenant. He's in dispatch right now.
He's serving in different ways now.
Yes, he is. He's doing it, and he's excellent down there. He's excellent.
Chief, yeah, as I mentioned, I could see just a change in your emotions just talking about Jeff's deal. And the listeners, we've Jeff came on and he talked all about it from his perspective and his recovery and all that. And man, that's just it's rough.
I can't imagine it.
So you've been going on 40 years. You've had a lot of people that you've worked with, mentored. They mentored you. Can you kind of talk about some of those people?
Yeah. So one of the part of the time I was a captain over the drill tower, and at that point in time, we had like Chief Artist, Chief Ball, Chief Johnson, Chief Gray. Chief Gray's a fire chief in Las Vegas right now. He went to Aurora from here, Colorado, and then he's in Las Vegas now. We had Chief McKinley. He's in Cincinnati. There's Chief Cullens, Kaye. I mean, there's a bunch of deputy chiefs and chiefs of the department, and several battalion chiefs. We had some good lieutenants out there. There was a guy named Jimmy Don Dutton and Alvin Samples and George Florence. So they were the guys that had the hands-on, and they were all old school lieutenants, old school firefighters. So they tried to teach them how to be firemen, firefighters, and they would, they made it hard on them. We made it hard for them to pass. It wasn't, but we didn't make it impossible. If they wanted it, they were going to make it. And as you can tell by the guys that I just named out, and I mean, I guess
some of it worked out quite well.
And it's either thank you or I'm sorry, depending on if you're working for them, how you feel about them. You're welcome,
right.
or I'm sorry that's how it turned out for
you.
you.
But either way, that they went through it.
They went through it. Yeah, they did go through it. And one of the things that we would teach them, we had a chief that was he was the chief of the department here not long ago, and he didn't like the you have to do something because I say so type thing. And to some extent, I see where he's going with that. But our job and your job and the military job, those are jobs that sometimes you just have to do something because the guy said so. I mean, I can remember back when I was a rookie at 18s, we'd gone to a fire, and Squad 4, the one that Ronnie rode, there's another guy on the name of Ozias Clarkson. He didn't know me all that well, but we were inside, and he said, "Get out of there." And, so I moved out, and about the time I moved, an air conditioner falling in. He knew, he could tell. I mean, but if I'd have gone by this, well, hold on a second. I'll get out, but I want you to tell me why I've got to get out. Sometimes you have to just go and then learn the reasoning later on. And sometimes you just have to do it because you were told to do it,
Yeah, and a lot of people, you work off instincts, and leaders work off instincts, and a lot of times it works out in your favor.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, being a leader, Ozai, he was a private. He wasn't like he was an officer or anything, but he was a leader, and he knew, hey, I got to get this kid out there. He's going to die.
Yeah, leadership doesn't really matter what you have on your collar.
Does not at all. And I was going to talk to that about that quite a bit later on too. Also,
it's important.
Yes, it truly is. It truly is. But yeah, I enjoyed the time at the drill tower, and like I say, it seemed like it was pretty good for me out there. The ambulance, I was on the ambulance for a while, and the ambulance is kind of a necessary evil within the fire department. It
makes you well-rounded, though, in
your
skill set.
It does. That being said, I was never I knew how to perform CPR, but I was zero for a lifetime in saves. My lifetime and the person's lifetime that we were working on.
Right.
In fact, Jeremiah Bougeot, I don't know, he's a police officer, and he lives down where we were in the gym one day working out, and he was training a guy, and I looked up, and the guy was on the floor, and the guy died right there with us.
Wow.
And we both performed CPR on and tried to make it, but it just did not go that guy's way.
It was his time.
It was his time.
So you brought up in your bio, you brought up an incident that I'll be honest, it hadn't been that long ago. I kind of forgot about. And it happened downtown Dallas at the Earl Cabell building, the federal building.
Yeah. It was weird. That was the shooting at the federal building.
June 17, 2019.
Yeah, so we were sitting around the station, and we heard a run come in on a scanner, and our engine 18, it was engine 18 at that time. They got to run, I don't know, it wasn't welfare check, but it was something minor to where they were the only ones going. Well, they got down there, and lo and behold, there was the shooter thing going on, and this guy, unbeknownst to most of us, the guy was taken down pretty soon. But when we responded, my driver, and his name's John Spear, we responded. We go, we're headed north on, I believe it's Hervey. We get up around Elm, maybe a little further, and we head back. We're trying to set our command posts and stuff up far enough away that we can still be safe, but with it being mobile, kind of like on the original downtown shooting, when the guy was so mobile and you don't know exactly where to set it up, because you set it up here, the next thing you know, you look around the corner, there he is. So we were kind of trying to figure out, playing from that. Okay, well, we'll set it up here now. And
what information had you gotten?
Just that there was an active shooter at the Cabell building, and that was it. Nobody, like I say, I can't remember how long into the incident we were there when we finally figured out and were told. And I mean, this is police, everybody. I mean, the federal government obviously was there, and I mean, as we were there, you could every letter in the alphabet was responding. I mean, darked out, black cars with blacked out windows, because, like I say, federal building and the judge, and then some of the people that are on trial there. But it was quite a while before it filtered down to the fire department, and I'm not sure about the police, because they were at our command post with us trying to get our paramedics hooked up with the officers before they would go in. Before we actually were told, okay, it was one shooter, the shooter's down, it's been down for a while, and everything kind of downgraded. But it was pretty hectic and intense there for a while.
And it was a 22-year-old Army veteran. He opened fire outside the federal building.
Yeah. Right in the back, on the south side of it. We were all set up on the north side, on Griffin or
That's actually where most of the security is. He didn't know this, but that's actually most of the security.
The worst place for him to shoot.
Yeah, on the backside. And I believe one of the federal building security took him out.
That's what I heard. I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, pretty quickly. I mean,
He involved very quickly.
Yeah.
Thank God that he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't cause a lot of damage.
Right.
Because at that point, though, you don't know if it's a domestic terrorism situation.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
you know,
With everything else that was just going on in those times, and like I say, the worst shooting, I guess, in police history was, it's pretty fresh on the heels of that one.
It
was
wasn't
still
far from there.
It wasn't a distant memory for sure.
no, not at all. So once you got there, can you kind of describe that?
Well, we get there, we set up our command post, and then we start talking back and forth with the police to try to figure out, okay, is there only one guy? Then, because after they did figure out they had him down, it's like, well, was he by himself? Was it something? Was there something more going on? Did he plan enough that he put maybe secondary devices at other places?
That's happened here.
Exactly, secondary devices to where now we got to be careful when we set up our different commands, and then trying to figure out a way to coordinate with the different federal agencies that were coming in. And I mean, y'all deal with that a lot more, but that's like herding cats, trying to figure out something from them.
Oh, they hold it close to the chest.
Yes.
But did you actually, your unit go in and work on the guy, or?
Actually, the guy that 18s was the first one to respond. So we've got 6 stations in my district, and Battalion 1 and 18s is one of the ones. So the captain's name's Jim Royer, very good captain, young guy, but he's very, very astute and kind of really, really trains and keeps himself and his crew up to date on things. And it worked out real well that he was there. But I talking to him later on, he said, "Man, we didn't have a clue what we were going to." I mean, like I said, and I'm minimizing this a little bit, I guess, obviously, but it was almost like, hey, there's some breathing difficulties or chest pain or whatever. They didn't say that the chest pain was caused by a bullet to the heart or that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and he was a bad guy.
Exactly, a bad guy that was the hurt. It wasn't a police officer or one of our guys.
That's an incident that happened here and it's kind of like the headquarters attack when the guy had the armored car that came up here.
Exactly.
And he planted bombs outside of this building we're in now.
Right.
And because the person's success rate, the suspect's success rate was very low, it's kind of been forgotten.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Because there's been many other, active shooter situations. You got Casey and Will's deal. And that's very rare for y'all to roll up on.
For sure.
And even July 7th, that's rare for us.
Yeah, and then
deal with.
And like you mentioned earlier, I don't remember if it was on air or not, but we've got to be vigilant to not get complacent. And sometimes it's easy to, but we're just one breath away from something huge.
It's human nature to become complacent, and I don't care how sharp you are.
Right.
If you're not intentional about keeping your mind sharp and your senses sharp, it can sneak up on you really quickly.
Yeah, it's the monotonous and the mundane things that you get lulled into. I mean, I go back to thinking about, like, in the mornings when we come to work, the very first thing we do is put our firefighting gear on the car, check our SCBA, and you do it for over 40 years. You do it for so long, but you still got to remember, hey, it's just as important now as it was the very first time I've ever done it. And you got to remember that on these types of runs also.
Right, exactly. And it's little things that it's I've had on one of the SWAT operators, Matt Smith. Make sure you have a damn charged battery.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just little
things.
things.
In fact, the guy that I relieve in the morning and myself, we both, if you look in our coat pockets, you'll find extra radio batteries just in case you get stuck somewhere and you need to get a battery.
Yep. In this day and age, you have to always be prepared, and that's mentally exhausting in itself.
It really is.
But going through the alternative of not being prepared,
right?
That it's much worse.
Exactly, and it's kind of like if you misplace your wallet or your watch, and you think, well, I put that on every morning, or I put it in my back pocket, so I know it's not at home on the dresser where I usually leave it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get home and it's exactly there, and if we're not careful, these other things that are extremely important, they end up being in that same mindset.
Well, that's why people like you being a good leader, your job is to take care of the flock.
Right. Definitely.
It is,
yeah, most definitely. That's if it's not that, it's nothing.
Right. And taking care of the flock. You and I have talked off air about this, and I've talked to a lot of other firefighters about this, especially recently. And I want to get into mental health in this profession.
Right.
And kind of want to get your thoughts on this because you've seen. So I mean, you've 4 decades here. You know, I mean, and you've seen the change in the approach, especially to mental health in our professions.
Yeah, and it's weird the change that's come about because we talked earlier about the firemen and the captains and how they were just coming off of being able to take your badge up, or a lot of those guys were coming out of World War II, Korea, those types of mindset, and those guys were taught to just suck it up and do it, which is kind of bad, but it's also kind of good because if you really have problems, you just can't keep tamping them down.
Right.
But there are certain things as men that you've got to suck it up and just be a man. I'll give you an example. So back when I was on the ambulance, and I told you before, the ambulance was just a necessary evil. You learn a lot of skills, but I remember one night, William, my oldest son, was born, and Taylor was just born, and I was sitting out in my backyard talking on the phone to my dad. And I was going to work the next morning. I don't remember. I was going on about the ambulance. He never wrote it. I was going on about the ambulance and blah blah this, and I guess complaining a little too much. And when I finally got through, he said, "Well, sounds like you need to quit." I said, "Do what?" He said, "You need to quit the department." He said, "If you're that miserable," he said, "you need to find you something else." He said, "Because first of all, they deserve somebody better than somebody that's going to sit around and do like that, and you need to be that somebody better. But if you can't be, then hook them." And I told him, I said, "Well, man, I can't quit." He said, "I know you can't, and now you've heard yourself say you can't." He said, "So get back out there and do it."
Right.
So we need a lot of that. I needed that. I mean, didn't have mental health issues, and I think that's another thing too. At our station, and you'll kind of on here, like I said, you're going to be able to figure out that I had a semester of psychology back in the 1980s at Hickjick when I get through dazzling you with all these sayings and stuff. But our guys will sit around. And a lot of times they'll try to categorize or talk about a guy, and we'll define. It's almost like, well, it's kind of hard to get to that point because you and I right now, if we try to figure out why one of the guys committed suicide or did whatever, we can't because we're thinking from a rational point of view. You can't.
We're not in the middle of the fog.
Exactly. And I don't know that I've ever been to that fog. I was going to I'll tell a story about one guy in just a second, but we've got guys that, even some of the people that have killed themselves. You would think that, okay, there was a breaking point in their, whether it was their mental, emotional, psychological, that's when things started clicking wrong. If that person could go back to, 3 or 4 weeks before that, chances are that person, and they could look in the future and think, okay, on this day, I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
At, some point in time earlier on, they'd think, okay, hey, I'm not going to get to that point. I'm going to do whatever it takes. But that's when they're thinking rationally. And by the time they get to this point, they're not thinking rationally anymore.
Well, you're in the wellness unit, and I'm a member of it, and I've been on since '97, and I've seen so much change. I have changed myself.
Yes,
but I look at things through a different lens now, and I heard something the other day, and it was Jordan Peterson, and he's brilliant. But he talked about suicide, and he said, there's so many pathways to despair.
Yeah, exactly.
And he brought up something so simple as telling people that you believe might be in this kind of dark space. Can you wait to do it tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly.
And that way you think about it, and you hear stories about people that have jumped off a bridge and they've survived, and that was the best thing that's happened to them because it is final. There's no coming back. Right.
There's
no coming back.
That's a good point. And I guess that's what I was trying to say in a convoluted way is if you could get that person to think, okay, hold on a second. This is May the 12th. On September the 12th, I'm going to end up killing myself. Okay, right. Between now May the 12th and September the 12th, I'm going to do everything I can to not get to that point in my mind or whether it's your marriage or whatever that's caused you to
combination
get to that.
Of all.
Exactly. Right. Just everything weighing down. And so a lot of times I don't have social media, but over here, other guys, they'll say, well, this guy was a hero. The guys that have committed suicide, this guy's a hero. Well, he's not a hero. But then I've got guys, they'll say, oh, he's a coward or he's selfish. No, he's not a coward and he's not selfish. He's damaged. He's hurting. And a lot of times you lash out at the person that you're maddest at or you're hurting most. Well,
right.
When you lash at yourself, that's the person you're the maddest at, or the person that's hurting you the most at that time. So you lash out at them, and that way is in suicide. I had back to the paramedic thing. So I had a paramedic partner, and it was back in, it was going to be in the mid 80s, and I won't mention his name. And there's another guy I was going to talk about that I won't mention his name either, because they've got family, and I don't want the name. I can tell you later on, because it's not, they probably wouldn't care either, the family. But that being said, he came to our station that day, first shift there, and I was on the ambulance. He came in. Back in those days, you wore the same uniform, long sleeve, short sleeve. It was required that we do that. Well, he came in, I had on short sleeve, and he said, hey, I'm going to go put my short sleeve shirt on so we can be alike. And I thought, okay, it's kind of weird. But then he started talking to me about the kind of pen that he was going to use, and was that okay with me? I said, yeah. And then he said, hey, do y'all have very many suicide runs out here? Well, that was odd, but, I didn't really take it like that, because a lot of times guys would go in and say, hey, do you have a lot of trauma calls out here? Do you have more medical calls out here? I mean, looking back, this guy had a neon sign on his forehead saying, I'm going to commit suicide. I mean, and I didn't see it. I mean, if he'd have come in with a hangman's noose around his neck, I might have noticed it, but I didn't.
So
anyway,
what he was, the message he was giving, it wasn't
consistent. So anyway, we keep going through the shift and things on and off. Well, and he said, do y'all have very many suicide calls out here? Well, like I said, it was in Casa Linda, and it was, pretty well-to-do area, and you would think, no, not too many. But as it turned out, we did have quite a few out there. So that's what I told him. Well, it was around, I'm going to say about, it was after midnight. And so 731 was about the only ambulance in that area, up all the way up to like 57s, which is off of Aldelia, Skillman, the 635. So I don't know. Sometime after midnight, we get a run to Jupiter and Northwest Highway. There's an apartment complex over there. So we go in, and this guy and his wife. I mean, I guess they were naked. He was in the bathroom. She was in the bed naked. When we go in, she has shot herself in the head, and the guy comes out. When he comes out of the bathroom, she's laying in bed with her brains all over the wall. So we have our life pack that we could put on that tells you if there's any heart activity or whatever. Well, they didn't tell us that was that kind of run, so we didn't have it with us. So I went back out there to get it, and when I came back in, he had put his gloves on, and I mean, he was looking at the wound in her head and examining it. And I mean, it's like, you don't really need to do that, because there's brains on the wall,
Procured. Yeah,
exactly. That was another thing. And like I say, the dude had a neon sign flashing. So I'm not the guy that you want to if you're having trouble just to be able to pick up on these little subtle signs, because this is the biggest one. So on the way back to the station that night, we're at Garland Road and Peavy, sitting at the stoplight. He's driving, and I'm on the passenger side. And I can still remember right now, and I turned away from the mic, but I was looking over to the right, just down at the little gutter, and I said, I can't imagine just how empty or futile life seems that last second before you pull the trigger or whatever. He said, sometimes life's like that. And still, it didn't dawn on me.
Right.
So I think it was probably the next morning or the morning after that, but it was definitely the morning before we went back to work, because my dad was still working at that time. And he called me up. He said, hey, do you know a fireman named so-and-so, so-and-so? I said, yeah, I rode the ambulance with him. He's at my station now. I just rode the ambulance with him last shift. He said, well, he killed himself when y'all got off work the other morning. And went home and made a pallet in his garage and turned the car on, and that was it. And so that's what I'm saying. You don't, even when I hate to say it, the signs are right there for you, other than a noose around his neck.
Right. Well, looking back now, you can look back and
exactly.
say
every one of those
sign,
things. Exactly. There wasn't a neon sign that day, because if there would have been, I wouldn't have been so, cold, callous, whatever, to not try to help the guy out.
Yeah, but you don't always know, and that's why we've had some suicides, and we've talked to several people, and we had a suicide in 2023 that I had talked to the person that morning.
Yeah.
And
really?
I'm in the wellness unit.
Yeah.
And I had no indication, but there's not many days that go by that I don't try to recreate that conversation.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yes.
Yeah, and it sucks, because another thing Peterson said that really hit me was that the path of destruction that you really leave behind.
Yeah.
People your friends and family that probably never will recover from this.
No doubt. No
and
doubt.
It's true.
Well, I mean, you and I are both talking about these guys. I knew this guy for one shift. You knew the guy you talked about.
Oh yeah, we're good.
But it does, and I think that's where when people do call them cowards or selfish, I think that's what they mean by it. That hopefully they don't actually mean that the guy's a coward. Because to me, I mean, not to make it any grand feat or anything, but take your own life. It's not a coward. I mean, because
you're at your lowest moment, and,
exactly,
and you don't see any other way out.
No,
but I think people that do that, not all of them, but they imagine that people would be better off without their life.
Right. And if they could only do like you said, Peterson, a while ago, can you just put it off for a day?
Just put it off for a day,
and then could you go ask somebody, hey, do I mean anything? And if they tell you no. Then but if you go to ask the right people, they're not going to say you don't mean anything to me. You can check out, and my life will move forward.
But I've dealt with some peep friends, and I've dealt with some widows of the people that were left behind.
Right,
they miss you.
Oh yeah, I've got another friend I was talking about. He was at 34s, and he volunteered after the war after the bombings in New York.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. He wasn't in the military. Actually became a hero, came back. He went in and tried to save a kid in a fire by himself, got him out. Just super nice guy. I can look over my life and got a pair of Corcoran jump boots that I wear at the fire station that he helped me get. I got a couple of AR-15s that he assembled. And I never thought about those things, until, like I do now, until he took his own life. And then you start seeing this guy in just a different, and we've had those kind of conversations about suicide when he would come back, because we used to sit around and smoke cigarettes at the station and just share all kinds of things, talking about PTSD. And at that point in time, he didn't believe in PTSD. And it's like, well, it's kind of like, and like I said a while ago, I believe in Jesus. And that's the same. That's kind of like that. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It's real. PTSD. Just because you don't believe in PTSD, it doesn't mean that it's not there.
I think that they may have the belief that they are immune to it.
Yeah,
and they have made it in their mind, especially in our first responder world, especially for the men. Which, quite frankly, and you look at the statistics, men kill themselves more than female.
Yes. Yep.
So we especially are angry at ourselves because in our mind we're this low and we're feeling this weak, and we're supposed to be immune to it, and that's not facts.
That's right. And I think it kind of goes back to what I said a while ago with tamping it down and pushing it down and letting it come up. Just for some people that does work, but it's not a cure all for everybody. And there's very few people probably that it does work for. That the ones that aren't killing themselves, so they may still be drinking themselves to death or on drugs or something else. So it may look like their life is all together because they're handling the stress, but they're not necessarily handling it like they should. And so these young guys that hear that, they think, well, so and so saw the same thing I saw. One of the things I was going to talk about, we had a CISM on that carbon monoxide thing, and I told you that I thought, man, there's nobody overly bothered about this. We really don't even need to do this. Luckily, we don't have a call in that. They tell us we're going to do it. Man, we had a guy broke down, and there's 20 guys in the room. This guy's over there crying. The only one that's doing it didn't hit him, but the problem is it hit him. That part, and that matters.
And that could be a combination of things. Yeah. Something going on in personal life,
for
or
sure.
Something lost a family member, or you never know what people are battling behind the scenes.
For sure.
People show you what they want to show you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually they don't want to show you that they're suicidal or they're homicidal or they've done bad things.
Yeah.
They hide it.
Yep, they do.
People have gotten really good at putting on a mask, but
definitely.
Like Mr. Peterson says, can you put it off? Can you put it off to another day?
Yeah, it's almost like a chain. If you could just remove that one link, or a table leg. It's got a table with 3 legs. If you can just keep all 3 of those legs on there, but if you take one of them out, it falls, and that's kind of what happens with some of these people.
Well, from the outside of looking in, though, we're just we're brothers and sisters right across the way from you, and I look over and it's sad to me that that y'all have had so many.
We've had,
you've had 10 suicides in 5 years, and at least 5 attempts that we know of.
And that's what after you started talking to me about that, I called my dad up and said, hey, or went to see him and said, hey, do you ever remember any suicides in where you were coming up? And he thought for a minute and said, I can think of 3. Now there could have been more but usually the department was smaller, And I'm sure they told him if it happened. So the 3 that he could remember, probably the 3. But it's like I told you before, all 3 of those guys had cancer. You know, they were terminal, and and not that there's a reason, but it wasn't like they were having they weren't having emotional, mental problems or psychological.
Well, they were probably depressed or anxious, depressed because of the.
And they know they're going to die anyway. You know, it's like, let's hurry it up. But one guy, he was rational enough to think that when he did it, he was, in fact, he actually was one of the guys that died in the fire. The Golden Pheasant was real good friends with him. Had nothing to do with his suicide. The cancer diagnosis is what happened to him. But I'm pretty sure he shot himself with a shotgun. But he sent his family to the movies, and then called the fire department right before he did it, so that the fire department would find him and his family wouldn't come home and see him with his brains blown out everywhere. So I mean,
it's usually planned. A lot of people plan it out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that do it out of frustration or just anger or despair, obviously, and they do it for that moment. But a lot of people, I know that they have literally planned it out. They planned out they've looked at it's ideation, and then it turns, if they don't get help, they don't talk about it, and they don't get their switch flipped to thinking about the true ramifications of this, they will go up from ideation to actually acting.
And see, the thing is so much about this that just hearing you say these things, we don't hear those in the field, and I'm sure your guys don't either. And so, being police and fire, and maybe military to some extent, I wasn't in it, but I'm assuming they're the same way. You're given a problem, and you're taught to solve the problem. And then a lot of times in our environment, when you can't solve it, you ignore it. So
and it festers.
And then our pension is a prime example. You've been here, we were here all forever. How bad it was going. We can't. It's not bad. Then all of a sudden it is. But there was nothing we could, individually.
Right. And
I think that's what's happening. So when more guys need to hear what you're saying, as far as I know they do in the fire stations, because we're not hearing any of those kind of things. And just little things to
talked about. It needs to be directly
exactly.
And I have talked. Had to deal with somebody recently that was in this. It wasn't even on DPD. It was on another PD that reached out to our wellness unit for some help. That I had to be very direct. You got to be direct. If you sit and ignore, and I told some of your people, I said, it saddens me that I probably got more Facebook. I got more firefighter friends now in my 28th year because of doing the show and because of the role that I'm in now in ATO and all that in the last 5 years probably than I have in the other 23 years combined. But so I have a lot of Facebook friends, and I'll see somebody just sneak up a thin red line profile pic, and then it's quiet. And then it'll go down another few months. Another one will just pop up. You can never normalize suicide and accept it as part of the culture, because if you do that, it's never going to change.
Right.
And that's why you're right. We need to keep talking about
it. And you can't ignore it.
Go head on with it.
Like I say, we'll either do like you say, it just becomes normalized, or you just ignore it completely. And we can't do either one of those, because, like I say, it doesn't matter if. When he was talking about those 3 that happened that many years ago, or the one that I knew of until here lately, doesn't matter what went on then. We're faced with it now. I mean, that's one thing that history doesn't impact at all, because we could have had a great history with mental health and suicide and whatever, but we don't now.
A bad history in alcoholism.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's true.
How many Vietnam vets come back who are hooked on drugs?
Exactly. And we do have the problem now, whether we've had it in the past now, and it looks like it's here to stay. And it's going to continue to get worse. And now, unless we do get in there and really try to, figure out,
you got to punch back. You got to come out swinging on it, and that's where leadership comes in, and just you got to come out just swinging.
Right.
And when I had to talk to that one officer from the other department, I was very direct and I was very blunt. Of like, listen, I don't know you that well. I don't really know you at all, but. I know there's got to be somebody, you may not feel it, but there's got to be somebody somewhere in your life that your friends, family, that they're going to be devastated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Somebody's going to miss
devastated.
you. Yeah,
Yes.
somebody's going to miss you.
You may not feel it at the time.
So stay alive for that one person. If
Right.
it's just one, stay alive for that one person. You know.
Yep. That's a topic that we can't talk about enough.
No, for sure. For sure.
Well, speaking of bad coping mechanisms and alcoholism, I got to befriend your sons.
Yes.
You talk about them.
Yes. They they think the world of you, both of them. Taylor obviously works a lot closer with you, and I'm gonna tell you, he works with or tries to work with a lot of different departments, whether it be police and fire, and you'd be surprised that he's not necessarily met with all the openness that you have and the care that you have for your guys and for our guys. I realize that maybe 30% of your budget goes towards Dallas firemen.
Yeah,
which
ATO.
and like I said, we appreciate that more than you could possibly imagine because. And I talked to Goat, and I'm not going to go into his story. Hopefully, you'll be able to get him on, and he's got a good story to tell. But he's a prime example of what ATO did because I can remember it's the 3rd or 4th of January, and I talked to William, and he said, "Hey, call Joe King." It's the very first conversation I ever had with you. And, man, within I don't know when Goat checks in because that's one thing that's weird, or not weird, but my sons will never talk to me at all about anybody that's ever been out there. No matter who you are or what's going on, I have no clue. I was working out at the gym. It was probably somewhere mid-January, and Goat's captain called me and said, "Hey, Goat's been in that rehab out there with your sons for however long." I said, "Man, didn't know it." I said, after that happens, I don't know. I don't know anything at all because they're not allowed to talk about it, and nor do I want to talk about it.
Right.
I do know that because Goat shared with me, and he goes out to the academy and talks to our young recruits and tells them, well, like I said, he was a Marine. He's got a lot of family in the fire department. He's a good fireman. So when he talks, people listen. And
he comes in with street cred.
He does. Yeah. He brings it with him. So, yeah, my sons, they really look forward to you. And then there's the owner of Stonegate. His name's Pat. And then the president, her name's Allison. She's a sweetheart. I mean, they both of those two, they're up and they're not really hands on, but they care so much about the people that come out there. I mean, they just got through with the crawfish boil that they put on every year for the alumni. Mm-hmm. And I think Taylor said that maybe you were going to get to come next year. It's in the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday, so it's pretty busy. But we get to go, and I mean, there's just a ton of guys. And one guy gave his testimony of how his life had changed. He had his wife and his son there, and he's talked about how, not only for him, he said, but man, he said, now I get to have a life with my son. My son was like 5 years old.
Your true legacy. Your
yeah.
kids are your true legacy.
Yes. And I mean, this guy, it's life changing. They're a Christ-centered facility, and that's due to, my sons and then Pat and Allison to make sure that there's something letting them know there's somebody that's stronger out there that can help you get through this. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And if you can finish it, if you can kick it right now, if you don't do something, you're not going to kick it forever. This is something that's going to always be a part of you. So they really they really care. And then there's some other guys out there that work in there with Taylor and them. But Taylor, obviously being that he is the police and fire guy for them, he's and like I said, with my job and then my dad, they really have an affinity for police and fire in the military to some extent.
I can tell you from my standpoint of meeting both of your sons and working with them closely, especially Taylor. I mean, they have a very soft heart when it comes to first responders.
They truly do. And and like I say, going back to Pat and Allison, they do also. There's not just first responders that go. There's a group, but I think also talking to Goat, it helps some of these other guys that are coming in that are just, whether it be a banker or whatever, to see a guy that's a fireman or a policeman in the military. Hey, this guy, he's having the same problems I'm having. It's beneficial. And so, like I say, when they do the crawfish thing, Pat and Allison and then Pat's family, they come. I mean, they want the people to know that, hey, yeah, you've got these people that you see day in, day out, but the owner and the president, we care about you too. We want your life to get back on track, and it's an amazing place to be a part of.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, alcoholism is a disease.
Oh man,
it is a disease, and it's an addiction that can get a hold of you, and it is hard to claw your way out. And then when you bring on that disease and our culture of drinking and our culture of pouring on trauma daily.
Yep.
It's a bad combination, and I have nothing but great things to say about Stonegate. We've sent double digits in our officers there since our alcohol leave policy that our department started up under Chief Garcia.
Right.
And we'll get it. I know you got some things to say about him, but yeah, no, I take a lot of pride in what we do in this wellness unit because. It was not like this before.
Right.
And it was another hiding in the shadows, and people would get, if they did go, it was found out they went to a rehab place, they would be put in a place that nobody would want to work, and they'd be forced out. But that's not like here in DPD now.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, because the thing is, and I don't understand alcoholism or drug addiction any more than I do suicide, but the people that do understand it seem to think or seem to say, and it must be true, that it is an illness or a sickness or whatever.
Yes.
So it's amazing to me that when we have some of our very own that have this illness or this sickness, that we can kick them to the curb, but we could have somebody that has high blood pressure or high cholesterol or diabetes, and those are the people that our insurance companies are pouring gazillion dollars into to help get well, and these other ones over here that really, I mean, because let's face it, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I have high cholesterol. Diabetes. Some of those things are manageable if you do stuff. Sometimes this alcoholism, after it gets you, it's not manageable by you anymore. And you can't control it.
Alcoholism doesn't. It affects so many people outside of just your own body.
Exactly, you're exactly right. My high cholesterol only affects me. If I die from it, it affects my grandkids, my family. But it's that,
Yeah, you're not. It doesn't contribute to anger issues.
Exactly.
It contribute to.
It might make me mad at myself when I shoving my face full of too much food.
Right. Yeah.
But I know what you mean. It doesn't. You don't start lashing out at other folks that are, destroy your own life
and ruin relationships, ruin careers.
Yes.
We've seen it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You think about the lives.
And people put too much into this first responder world to throw it away for that, especially when there's help out there and there's help available.
For sure. And it's, it's just, well, in your situation, you're sitting here almost begging them. The police department, your whole unit over here is almost begging them, come to us. We got, y'all got an incredible group of people here.
I shake my head every time I see an officer arrested for DWI, and it pisses me off. Yeah. But to hear people like going out telling his stories, and I know who he is.
Yeah.
I know the clout that he has behind his name. Good for him.
Yeah. Oh, he is an advocate. I mean, he truly is. He's good for the situation.
Speaking of that, and that's you go into people like that, rank and leadership doesn't, being a great leader does not matter a rank or what's on your collar or your title.
Not at all. In fact, I was going to talk about that a little bit.
Yep.
And as I mentioned to you a while ago, I go to a church at First Baptist Dallas, and we've got a pastor, Robert Jefferson. He's pretty well outspoken. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons that my wife and I chose to go there, because he's such a strong leader. When he feels like something needs to be said, because as far as going to church, and I believe that a pastor needs to preach about Jesus, but there's a lot of churches around that truly do preach the gospel like it should be preached, but their pastors are not as strong on other things. And so that's one of the reasons we went to him. And one of the things that's weird about this situation is he's a leader, and at the end of the services, he'll talk and he'll ask people not to leave, because he's got a message that he wants people to hear. And I mean, you'd think a movie just let out, and that's not, I'm thinking you want him to be able to just scream at him, say, "Hey, I just told you not to move." Obviously he can't do that. And then you go to a leader like Chief Garcia, and I know it sounds weird or may sound weird, but the fire department, a lot of the firemen that I'm around, we took such great pride in having Eddie Garcia on the TV. Even though he wasn't ours, when you'd see him get on TV, you'd think, man, that's a policeman right there. That is the guy that if my family needed help, he's the guy that I would want kicking my front door in to take care of my family. So we took a huge pride in having him as the chief of the Dallas Police Department. And it was an extreme kick in the gut when Austin stole him away from us. It's like, don't go down there. They don't deserve somebody like you. We deserve you,
Right.
And then you just looked at, you looked at the department and you just the sense of pride. And I mean, a guy with the kind of integrity is something as small as the tattoo issue, and he had tattoos, but he didn't think that they needed to be the stories that we got that they needed to show. And he would wear long sleeve shirts, and he stuck to that until finally, I guess somebody negotiated it down at a higher level than him, or maybe he worked with the fire chief and they decided whatever. But that was the impression that we got, that they needed to both get on the same page. And he acquiesced to that to some extent, to where y'all could start doing those things. But I mean, it was, he was a leader that not only, it seemed like, that not only did he lead, but he did what he said. Like I say, he kept his tattoos covered, He
kept them all covered.
That's what I'm saying, at all times. So, yeah, when we lost him, I think we lost something huge. And, going into that along those lines, y'all's guy coming in, I mean, he's got obviously he's got some big shoes to fill. We've got a new guy coming in, Justin Ball, and he was one of the ones I mentioned a while ago that came through the academy while I was a captain out there. So I've known him since he's put his first foot on fire department dirt, and Justin actually has the ability, I think, to be maybe equal to Chief Garcia. I know he has the best chance of anybody I've seen in a while to do that. He's just a personable person. He's got a great opportunity to try it, and he does have the ability to. I talked to him just a little bit. He's going to be walking a tightrope because he's got to please the city manager, which is what Chief Garcia did. Mm-hmm. I mean, he still kept her happy because they didn't want him to go when he left. I mean, they offered him
right.
quite a bit of money to stay. So he walked that tightrope better than anybody I think I've ever seen, because who leaves here and everybody wants him to stay? The city government wants him to stay. The police officers want him to stay. The fire department wants him to stay. And then what he does to us, he doesn't stay. I mean, and I don't blame him. I mean, obviously that, but Chief Ball has that same, and were it me, being the new chief of police or the new fire chief, the first or second phone call I would be making would be to Eddie Garcia and say, hey, what do you think I need to do here? You've navigated some pretty bad situations here, came in on the heels of some worse situations that were going on in Dallas, and you righted the ship, and everything seems to be going great. Can you give me any pointers? And on top of that, do you mind if I call you throughout the year just to kind of get some information? If I, do you mind, if something pops up, kind of like what you and I said a while ago, and I'll go into this, and just because you got something on your collar doesn't mean you're the smartest person there, So yeah, I would think that would be a very good thing to do, would be to, at least say, hey, I may give you a call every once in a while and just say, hey, what do you think about this? Or I'm confronted with this. Have you ever seen it before? If you haven't, what's your take on it now? How would you approach it? Humble yourself.
Well, Chief, what I'm hearing so far about Chief Como is that he's going to be a great leader for us.
Good.
That's what I'm hearing. And then also, I know for a fact that he is also a compassionate person.
That's great. Well, it's hard to say for sure, but when we saw him, obviously the thing, and then the second day when I think there was something, I can't remember, some kind of an event going on, and he was, whether it was a run for something or whatever, they had him on the news, and he seemed like he could be a very compassionate and open-minded kind of guy. So,
I think he's going to bring things to the city in this department that, especially coming from the federal side,
right.
He's going to bring in some ideas that city police maybe not have seen before.
Right, and he'll have avenues to bigger and better things that we've ever had, since he has federal, federal ties and people he can call.
What are some of the qualities you think a leader should have? You mentioned Justin Ball, and I'm excited for y'all, and everybody that I've talked to is excited to have him as taking the helm officially for DFD. What are some of the qualities you look for in a leader?
Well, I think, and this isn't easy. Humility is very big, I think, because like I say, you and I talked about a while ago. A lot of times a guy will put something on his collar, star, bar, whatever, and all of a sudden he's the smartest person there ever was. He's the only person that's ever done it. And it's like, no, there's been a gazillion that have done it before you. There will be a gazillion that do it after you, and chances are you're not going to set the world on fire. But to realize that just because you have those on your collar doesn't make you the smartest person in the room, and that's okay. You don't necessarily. I mean, you think about it. We're in here right now. I don't want to be the smartest person in this room, because if y'all are smarter, then I can draw on what y'all know and make me better. Same thing with, like I was talking about with Chief Ball and Chief Como calling Chief Garcia. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that Chief Garcia would call, that is in his past. And I think he just comes across as the guy that's humble enough that knows, okay, hold on a second. I need to make a phone call to so-and-so to deal with this, just, at least to run it past them to get an outside perspective of that. And I think
surround yourself with good people.
Exactly. And you'll look like a genius. Even if you're a mouth breather, you'll still come across as somebody that's just, man, this guy's incredible, So I think that's one thing. And then to leave room that you're wrong. A lot of times when you know you're wrong, But sometimes you could be wrong and you don't even know you're wrong. Just keep in your mind that, hey, there's a possibility that even though I know I'm right, I might not be right,
And admit it.
Yeah, admit it when you're wrong.
And correct.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think there's a saying about fools, and it's like if you wake up in the morning and early in the morning, you walk out and you run into a guy and you think, this guy's a fool. And then later on, you run into somebody else, and that's a fool. And then you keep going all day long. You've run into nothing but fools. It's a better chance that you are the fool that's been meeting people all day long.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many fools in the world for you to run into every day. So chances are, if it's just one in the morning, that person might have been. But you get to the end of the day and you look back and you think, man, there's a lot of fools or stupid people I ran into over this day. It's like, well, maybe I'm the guy. We was talking to a guy at the station yesterday morning. Not about that, but he grew up and he said, I had to get out of my hometown because it was running me down. He said, I was just not ever going to become a better person. He said, and I left and I went to this other town. And he said, you know what? It's the same thing. He said, I got there. He said, man, I got to leave this town. I'm not going to be a better person. He said, didn't take me long. He said, to Donald, it wasn't the town. He said, it was me. I was the problem, and I was running from it, trying to find it somewhere else. He said, it dawned on me, hey, I've got to change my life. He enrolled in the Navy, enlisted in the Navy, and, he said it changed his life. But he had to come to the realization that, hey, I'm the problem. It's not everything else around me. And I think a lot of leaders need to realize that too, is you may be the problem. You may try to cast it somewhere else, but you could very easily be the problem with your organization, especially if it's dying.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.